right. So welcome everybody. Welcome back to Conquer the Clutter podcast. It is great to see so many people coming from all over, my goodness, all over North America. Today we're going to talk about Claire and her experiences with dysthymia, which is a lesser known form of depression. Okay, and I felt that this was particularly important because so many people are expressing that feeling of being hard pressed to be able to focus, to be able to commit, to be able to summon the motivation and the energy to meet the goals that they reasonably have for themselves. All right, so I thought what we would do is we would take it down a notch from major depressive disorder or really any of the comorbidities where folks tick enough boxes to self-identify as having a disorder. I want you to be aware that there's a whole continuum that still makes you feel blah, all right, when you don't tick enough boxes. It's not like it's a zero-sum issue. And so respect who you are, respect how you feel, but don't give up. Don't let that be a reason not to look for solutions that can work for you. They're out there. We'll find them together, all right? The other thing that, as life progressed, Claire discovered was that she was also, a bit later on in life, diagnosed with a learning disability that had reared its head in true fashion, unmissable, when she was under sufficient stress, probably that it put her over the threshold. It had probably always been there, all right? But there weren't enough boxes that it became a pattern that authorities, that experts, that support people could say, whoa, let's have a look at this. There are too many consistent issues here, all right? Then additionally to that, and I don't want to overwhelm you today, but I want to show you, remember we've talked about that series of setbacks where one doesn't knock you out of the game, but there's a reason, there is a belief that negative things come in threes. All right, that's what I want to illustrate for you today. Not so that you can be overwhelmed by Claire's life, but that you can bring that home to yourself and realize, I need to reach out for the solutions and the support that I feel I need on the first setback, on the threat or the indicators that something negative is about to happen. Because if I wait to the 1, 2, 3 punch, I too am not invincible. A problem solved is better than a problem lived with, all right? Or a problem avoided. Let's take that back a bit. A problem avoided is better than a problem solved, okay? So I want to start off by thanking Claire for her generosity, all right? Her generosity in sharing her life and the 3 1, 2, 3s for her. Dysthymia, a learning disability, and then a consistent pattern of meaningful losses that over a lifetime, in addition to the other 2 challenges that she had to live with, requires such immense effort for her to remain present, engaged, and consistent. Isn't that what we've been talking about? The consistency of our efforts to deal with the clutter in her life and in yours. And so I know that this is really important information, because I know many people who have told me, and people who are tuning in today and tune in regularly, have told me that they too struggle in their own unique combination of factors with handling the clutter. And the clutter, the existence of the clutter, is the byproduct of the untreated situations, okay? So thank you, Claire, for your willingness to share. At about age 20, Claire was diagnosed with dysthymia. Okay. Now, according to Healthline, dysthymia is typically defined as chronic but less severe form of major depression. Okay. It shares many symptoms with other forms of clinical depression. The difference is it's more persistent. It's a more persistent depressive disorder, and it's also typically known as PDD. The acronym PDD is used to describe people who experience clinically significant. When we say it's less than, we don't mean that it's minor, all right? It's a clinically less significant degree of depression, but here's the catch. It continues and is present over a long period of time. The level of depression is usually not as severe, and certainly not severe enough to meet the criteria for major depressive disorder. Major depressive disorder is also referred to as MDD. So we're looking at PDD and MDD. All right, and we'll use those short forms as we continue. One of the biggest differences between PDD and MDD is its relationship to time. People with MDD, major depressive disorder, quite often have a normal mood baseline when they're not experiencing depression. However, people with PDD experience depression pretty much all of the time. They don't remember or know what it feels like not to be depressed to some degree, all right? Time is a defining consideration when we're diagnosing, even when we're self-diagnosing, all right? For a diagnosis of MDD, symptoms have to have lasted for 2 consistent weeks without break. The symptoms of MDD and PDD, even though they are basically very, very similar, can differ in time and intensity. All right. So MDD may have a higher intensity for shorter blocks of time with breaks in between. PDD quite often has a much lesser intensity, but it's the never ending, it's experienced as the never ending story. What do people feel like in either one of these types of depression? They include feelings of feeling sad for no apparent reason, empty, tearful, or hopeless. When responding to even minor situations in their life, they experience responding in anger or frustration, losing interest in normal activities of daily living, such as self-regulation. There's that word. There's that word we're all looking to enhance in our life in order to take on the clutter and persist through to success. Self-regulation is hugely important in alleviating chaos and daring to strive and reach goals. Hygiene, so losing interest in personal hygiene. losing interest in eating normally, in maintaining one's living environment. How many hands go up for that reality? The non-essential aspects of work life. So we do the things with PDD, we do the things that are absolutely vital, essential, but there's not much left over for all those other things that are required that are not knocking at the door. Lose interest in socializing, even with true friends. Lose interest in a sexual expression, which is part of adult life. You don't have to have a sexual partner, but our libido plays out in so many creative ways if and when we don't have a preferred partner. Lose interest even in hobbies. We sleep too much or too little. Our weight fluctuates, and I'm not talking about a genetic body type or metabolism where that happens as part of your genetic makeup, all right? I'm talking about chronically losing and gaining weight, responding to even small tasks with a complete lack of energy, even when we have an average degree of interest in those tasks. We look forward to, want to perform those tasks, but it's like, where is the steam going to come from? Have trouble making decisions, thinking things through, all right, that plan, thinking it through, concentrating when we're trying to apply the plan, and remembering becomes difficult. We just can't find the energy to do those things reliably. It's not all or nothing, all right? PDD, dysthymia, might be less intense or debilitating, but here's the catch. It's continuous. It feels continuous and long-lasting. Treating dysthymia and depression typically are by customizing for the individual a response to their symptoms. So we treat all forms of depression symptomatically. And that can include a combination of psychotherapy, talk therapy, and medication. That marriage of both is a much better combination. Medication is an aid, but it is not the solution, all right? Being able to process the things we're thinking, feeling that are undermining our energy and our motivation, figuring those things out and making a plan that's realistic and respects who we are chemically and in other ways, psychologically. For either condition, your doctor might recommend antidepressants, things like SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors, okay? Tricyclic antidepressants, if any of those terms are familiar to you, those are quite common medicinal treatments for aids for depression, together with various forms of talk therapy, which is also very, very important and very helpful. So check out the information. Sorry, I've got an itchy nose here, folks. Check out information about dysthymia versus depression online. Especially look at the work by Scott Frothingham. And there's a heading dated November 30th, 2018 that's particularly helpful. It's online if you just Google it. Learn about the 9 different types of depression and how to recognize them. All right. This is not meant for you to self-diagnose. This is meant for you to have good quality information to give yourself a heads up so that you can stop blaming yourself and start pulling in those other supports that are going to allow you to be your best available, present, persistent self. Their individual signs and symptoms are also listed in his article. So what causes dysthymia? You know, like hoarding, Experts aren't sure what causes dysthymia or really even depression. There's no one size fits all. There's an argument for hereditary, that our genes may, in some cases, play a role. But many affected people don't have a family history of depression. And the reverse is also true. Others with a family history of depression aren't depressed. Abnormal functioning in brain circuits are also thought to play a role, or nerve cell pathways that connect different regions of the brain that regulate our mood. They're also thought to be involved. There are many theories, all right? But this is playing out in your life. That's why I need, and I want to encourage you to do this. Take personal responsibility for whatever is true. Set aside the self-blame and self-judgment. What do I need? Where is it? And how do I get enough of it to get myself back on my feet? Major life stressors. You can all put in my book, I put my hand up to that one. How many people here put their hand up to that one? Major life stressors can also be a factor in just crossing the threshold into enough boxes get ticked that at this point in time, you may have entered into a realm of depression. Chronic illness can just suck the energy out of you, the hope out of you, the perseverance out of you. There are only so many balls that we can, each and every one of us, keep in the air at any one point in time. If it's too heavy, look at the balls that you're trying to keep in the air and put the heavy ones down. If they're too heavy, put them down and do what you can reliably. You can do it. The best and the worst never lasts forever. Okay? Give yourself a break. Don't stop entirely. Slow down, but keep going in the direction you know you need to. Dysthymia in people can happen through a series of major life stressors, chronic illnesses, okay, relationship problems, socially, personally, and at work. That combination of pressures can put somebody who is biologically predisposed to developing depression into a sphere. It's a continuum. Here's the great thing about it being a continuum. If you can move up the degree of severity for depression, you can also move down the continuum. What do I need right now? Where is it? And how do I get enough of it to make a difference in the situation I'm dealing with right now? I'm not going to worry about the whole rest of my life. I'm not going to worry about all the other areas of my home. I'm going to do that safety audit. I'm going to stay on top of that so that at all times, at a bare minimum, I'm safe. The people who live with me are safe. And even my little furry buddies, if you have furry buddies in your life, they're safe. So are your neighbors. All right. So would paramedics be. So would any other first responders be, if God forbid that their services were required. Okay. How common is dysthymia? Hold on to your hat on this one. U.S. American statistics, and those are the people who have the most available statistics, 1.5% of the adult population live with dysthymia. For Claire, the onset of poor sleep for her is a bad sign. She's learned to really pay attention to that because it is an indicator that she's aware of that her tendency to PDD is deepening. So she tries to head it off at the pass. Now, in Claire's family, both sides had a history of depression. That's a good piece of information to have. But it went unacknowledged and untreated for a very long time because Avoidance was part of their family subculture when approaching and dealing with problems. Her dad likely lived with a degree of depression, right, which was largely normalized probably because depression in their family, both families, all right, was frowned upon. It was seen as a personal failure, somehow a fault, or not to be entertained as being true. Denial, going into denial. As Kathy, a client of mine, once told me, denial is not just a river in Egypt. Okay. Apparently, I can't remember who was the first author to say that, but I laughed, and I say it many times. Denial, all right, isn't a good place to go to. It is not a safe place to hide from the truth, because it meant that depression was called something else and normalized, like Dad's daily naps after work, needing to rest his eyes, was the way they framed it. Well, that could be, but when we have a pattern that is persistent, and we have a need to do anything, which becomes a pattern, particularly things that don't pay off in our life. They're not moving us forward. They're either holding us in place persistently, or they're pulling us back. All right, they're interfering with our goals, with our motivation, with our getting our needs met. When we do that, it's almost certainly based on something other than, as in Dad's framework, tired eyes, needed to rest his tired eyes, is the way Claire remembers it. I say that because we all, every single one of us, myself included, need to open our eyes to the negative patterns in our lives and know that we are worth finding the answers we need. Those answers are out there. All right, we're not going to find them by denial. We're not going to find them through avoidance. We're only going to make those situations even bigger until we feel overwhelmed. We are never alone, right? And we don't have to remain overwhelmed. Despite his possible indicators of depression, as well as his repeated unavailability, on the positive side, great for Claire to see both sides. On the positive side of their relationship scale, he was unfailingly a kind, loving, caring father, as well as being a very, very quiet, very isolated man. Claire also has clear memories of, despite all of the mix of these factors, positive and not so positive, that made him often unavailable as a parent. She remembers him unfailingly as a loving, gentle man who blew her kisses from the car every day he left for work. She felt loved and feels that now, even with all of the positive and negatives. She has a firm belief that she had a good upbringing. She always felt safe and comforted by her parents. Her mom, on the other hand, was very loving, very affectionate, very dedicated. Claire remembers her as a great homemaker. She cooked and she baked. She cleaned. She did all the things that she believed were her role in life. She took care of her children, both of them consistently with kindness and gentleness. Dad even chipped in. This was a feminist, to some degree, a feminist household. That might be an overstatement. He even chipped in sometimes with cooking and baking and was pretty darn good at it, Claire remembers. She sees the positive. You see that scale. The positives exist. They are just as true. They are not diminished, because on the other side, it wasn't a Disney movie, all right? Just because there are things that are not as positive or that are actually negative doesn't take away from the positives. So long as there is not profound, severe neglect or any level of abuse, all right, that's a different relationship to the positives. it doesn't excuse. You can't excuse abuse or profound severe neglect just because there were positives. All right. When Claire was 4, at Easter, her father brought home a duckling for both she and her brother. Another year, it was a baby bunny for each of them. One of the very early losses for her was that neither of those Easter gifts, the duckling or the bunny, had a happy end. In fact, both died in a tragic, accidental way that had nothing to do with the care she provided. All right. However, one of the incidents in particular was extremely painful, and when she thinks of it, remains maybe not extremely painful at this point, but still very negative, very painful. It stays with her even today. I won't go into the details. There was the beginning. At this point, you see, this is the beginning of a sequence of what would have been minor traumas if dealt with individually. The cumulative effect of unaddressed, untreated negative events, traumas, setbacks, that's the thing that overwhelms you. All right. We are more likely to have minor events that stack up on one another if we don't deal with them. That's why it's so important. Deal with it, offload it, don't let it get to the point of overwhelm. We can't control what comes in our life, but we can influence it. All right, we can influence it. Avoidance and minimizing situations, only let them grow. At the age of 3 or 4, this is another trauma that Claire remembers vividly. At the age of 3 or 4, while she was playing at a neighbor's home, together with her best friend and the little boy who lived there, she was taken into the bathroom by the father of the little boy so that he could expose himself to her. He tried to get her to stay in the bathroom with him, but she managed, even at the age of 4. Hats off to you, Claire. Somebody did a good job. Okay, she managed to summon up the assertiveness, even at 4, and the courage to escape the bathroom. And so the negative impact couldn't extend beyond exposure. This was a significant experience, even though there was no physical touching, of imminent, what it's like to be vulnerable and at imminent threat, all right? Imminent risk. Even at 4, she remembers as part of her upbringing, knowing that girls don't go into the bathroom with boys. And to some extent, she blamed herself because of this. Even at 4, you can make a little 4-year-old. Look at how little a 4-year-old is. Look at how unprepared a 4-year-old is. And still, you have the beginning of a conscience that sometimes doesn't tell you the truth because you don't have the developmental basis to do that balance, all right? That was an additional trauma and an additional loss that she experienced. For whatever reason, she can't remember vividly. She didn't tell her parents immediately, but clearly she was still significantly traumatized silently, because a year later she awoke screaming from a nightmare in the middle of the night. True to form, her mother came to comfort her, and Claire told her the whole story. She remembers asking her mother if she was going to do anything about it, like call the police. Clearly, even at 5, Claire knew this was serious, all right? Her mother didn't say. The police weren't called. In fact, Claire's knowledge, even though her parents clearly disapproved of the neighbor's actions, they remained passive because they didn't want a conflict or to cause a disturbance. They did try to comfort her, but did nothing about it publicly or even directly with the man himself. Irony of ironies. The reason this is and remains to some degree important to Claire is that every day she had to go over and stand at the end of this man's driveway along with his little boy to catch her school bus. So every day, okay, it wasn't a past event that couldn't happen again. It was a niggling reminder of still being unsafe. And both of them, she and this man, knowing that he had gotten away with it for all intents and purposes. By grade 5, she remembers the onset of feeling chronically depressed, always feeling down. This is probably the onset of dysthymia. Around that time, quite suddenly, she started barely speaking. She was very, very quiet. She experienced another significant loss. She lived in an area where there weren't a lot of children to choose from to build friendships. And so in her neighborhood, any friend was especially important, particularly for little ones as we grow up. Okay, her closest friend suddenly had to move far, far away. Claire became even more quiet, even more introverted. She was devastated. Still vaguely feeling unsupported by her parents, her response to this, as a result of their response to this threatening adult assaulting her by exposing himself, she now was alone without her closest friend, right? Her isolating, quiet, withdrawn demeanor resulted in, if this wasn't bad enough, her teacher recommending that she be held back in grade 5. Claire strongly disagreed. She tried to intervene with her parents to convince them not to support the school in doing this. As an adult, she looked back at her grade 5 marks and found that they did not necessitate repeating her year. However, her parents agreed with the authority figures and she was held back. For the first time ever, she remembers holding a grudge toward her parents for years for agreeing, because it wasn't just 1 year for her. What it meant was that her remaining closest friends all moved on to the next grade. And then when the grade level dictated it to another school without her, she was left behind. What this meant, though, functionally, was that her closest friend and any other possible friends she had, all right, were having new experiences. They were doing other things. They were talking about other things. They were having opportunities to meet and grow and build common foundations for their friendship. But the common base left Claire behind, which meant that there was less and less and less of a realistic basis for friendships with this whole group of people who were her peer group. Right? And remember, there weren't a lot of other kids in her geographical area to make friends and replace those friendships. And how do you? These are the kids that she'd been playing with since 3 and 4 and 5, age 5, right? Now you're in grade 5. Where is the new crop of friends going to come from in a semi-rural area? Another major loss followed when she was 15. Her father died suddenly from a massive heart attack, and she found him. She had to tell her mother and her brother. Her mother's response was to be understandably devastated, but completely overwhelmed and not functioning well at all for quite a while. At 15, Claire didn't feel there was anybody else to pick up the reins. She felt it was her duty and responsibility to make things as manageable emotionally, physically, and in any other possible way a 15-year-old could think of. All right. She undertook these responsibilities. What she also did, though, at 15, you're not ready for that. All right. And if you can do it and you do it at your own expense. And the expense was She didn't have the right. It's not that anybody took it away. She gave it up. The right and ability to grieve for this father she adored. All right. Because her mother wasn't able to cope, it also became Claire's responsibility to deal with managing her older brother, who was 5 years older than her. He didn't step in. His grief response was anger and acting out behavior. She was constantly in a state of hypervigilance, afraid that he would do something like accidentally have a car accident or be injured or killed. And at 15, she had to take on the pressure that would be like the straw that broke the camel's back for her mother. There would be no coming back because her mother was managing so little. All right. In Claire's early 20s, she tried some counseling with minor results. In high school, she was diagnosed with a learning disability, correctly or incorrectly, which felt like another setback. She knew something was wrong, but none of the school authorities or her parents recognized something was in fact wrong. In grade 9, her marks were in the 90s. In grade 10, quite suddenly, there was a drop, her average mark being in the 50s and 60s. Suddenly, she found reading and comprehending extremely difficult, as was her ability to process information. That her ability to process was extremely slow, suddenly very slow. Coincidentally, nothing happens out of its frame of reference. There's always a good reason why these things happen. There are few mysteries in life. Don't accept that things just happen randomly. Okay? There's always like a significant chance that there is a preceding event. This time, all of this was happening in the same time period that her father died suddenly on Father's Day. Her dad had always encouraged her artistic skills, which was an outlet for her. And then suddenly there was no one to encourage her. Not that her mother wouldn't have wanted to, but her mother could not be present. All right. Her mom was absent in grief. Her brother was out of control in grief. And today, despite her heavy moods and lack of energy, still every day she makes a concerted effort to try to wake up. And as soon as she's aware she's awake, to start it with a positive outlook, not be defeated by the feeling of oppression and downness that she feels. But it feels onerous. It takes energy not to feel dark. And she's especially vulnerable on days when the weather is dreary, dark and dreary. It really, really affects her negatively. She has to force herself to do exercise and to walk regularly. And she does it just as evidence that she's still making the effort to move forward. She does find, however, she's developed some skills and some strategies that she'd like to pass on, and not to minimize them. It sounds so minor, but it isn't. It's very wise on her behalf. She finds that making lists really helps her focus. Now, these are not lists that go on for 6 city blocks, all right, that are not manageable. She makes a habit of doing the list the day before, the night before, so that when she starts each day, she has something meaningful as a way to know that there are things she needs to do. She doesn't start her day from a full dead stop. Really, hats off to you, Claire. All right, that is a very doable thing, and it's a very, very wise thing. Good for you for coming up with it. Now, on the positive side, okay, life isn't all about dreary. It's about the balance and how we manage it. All right, and how we look for the help we need. What do I need? Where is it? And how do I get enough of it to make a difference in this immediate short-term situation? At the age of 38, She went back to university and she earned her bachelor's degree in education so that she'd be a teacher. Right now, due to circumstances, nothing to do with her health, just the truth about education, she's a substitute teacher. What does this mean? This means that each day is very unpredictable and there's no way around it. All right. Will she be called out or not? Will she have to teach a class of kindergartners or somewhere up to and including grade 9ers? All right. That is some versatility. Okay, most of us would have a little bit of you better hope that the existing teacher has done her case plan, her day plan, and that it's up to date for you to work from, because you can only imagine trying to pitch hit that one. Each day, okay, fundamentally can be extremely different. So in this state of dysthymia, she still needs to be as flexible and adaptable as possible, and it requires a tremendous effort. She often wakes up anxious, okay, because of the degree of uncertainty each day can hold, but she has to go back to her list and remind herself, I can't afford to be overwhelmed. What do I need to do? This is my plan for the day. I can't give myself the luxury of going down that rabbit hole, okay? Fast forward to today. She finds dealing with clutter, because of all of this reality in her life, at this point anyway, her bottom priority, even though it affects her socially as well as personally. She's even caught her foot on things, tripped and broken toes. Getting through the day is her top priority. Despite her best efforts, she's ashamed. She feels that people would be shocked by the level of clutter in her living space. Okay? What she really would like is to be better at getting things done. The list is a good start, but getting things done. She does want to throw things out. However, just as she was starting to mobilize by doing a little bit of counseling, all right, and just getting a head of steam behind her, in 2018, she suffered a series of additional major losses, bang, bang, bang in a row, okay? Very quick succession within a year. She lost a cherished aunt who was her emotional go-to. She lost her beloved mother, right? And then on top of that, she lost her companion dog. Her grief was immense, right? The dysthymia felt profound. She took part in a grief, so she did look for, what do I need? Where is it? How can I get as much of it as I need to get myself back up on my feet, right? She took part in the grief group. It ran 2 to 3 times per week for a few months. And she said she actually felt a little bit better, that it did a little bit of good. Not enough, but a little bit. It's a start. There's no one perfect solution. It's the accumulation of the efforts we meet to identify our true needs, to get those needs met, and not to be satisfied with substitutes, to get the best source of support that we can get. Cuts down on the time and the number of other efforts we need to make up for settling for poor support. A week ago, she started with a new therapist doing emotion-focused therapy. She's had her first session and she found that emotional-focused therapy to be helpful, okay? At least it seems to be possibly helpful. At first, she didn't think it was very successful because immediately following, it felt completely overwhelming. Well, you can imagine how many traumatic and loss, grief-related things have been stacked up one on top of Claire over, gosh, from the age of 4, even before that with the bunny in particular. It just must feel like she had a mountain on her shoulders and never time or the luxury to cry and indulge herself in what are my needs. How can I get them met? All right. She started to cry a day or two after her first session. She started to cry, and she cried and cried and cried and cried and cried for quite a while. Then she realized that some of that feeling of emotional, mental oppression and grief had lifted a little, and the relief felt good. She was then amazed at just how relieved and how much lighter she felt. What do you need? What do you need? Every one of you out there, you're here because you need something. What do you need? Where is it, and how do you get enough of it? The answers are out there. Not one answer, because it wasn't one thing that brought you to your knees or overwhelmed you. Okay, what do you need? What remains, however, is for Claire to find a manageable way to get her 2-bedroom apartment decluttered. She has rooms full of clothes and knickknacks. Her master bedroom has clothes lying around, and that's actually where she tripped and broke her toe recently. She would really like her living environment to be different, and she's wondering where she's going to get the energy, the focus, and the motivation to persevere, live forward. Let's add one thing to that, our motto. Live forward and persevere. Never stop. Even if sometimes life sends us things we need to slow down, we keep moving forward, baby step by baby step, until we can pick up our speed and our head of steam again, okay? She's finding the podcasts helpful and affirming. And she's decided to take part in the hoarding support group that's starting on the 9th of November. All right. So she welcomes your input. Okay. One of the things that there is in it for her is your input, your thoughts, your suggestions, and any experience that you have had would be greatly appreciated. So I open the chat room up now to questions. Let's see what we've got here. Greetings, dear Wednesday pals and Elaine. That's great. From Miriam, I didn't understand what was going on. Can you clarify what that means, Miriam? I didn't understand what was going on. Last name, please. Okay. Scott who? Oh, yes, Scott who. All right, let me have a look. I'm going to go back in my notes, Scott. Fotheringham. All right, he has a whole line. If you Google dysthymia depression or dysthymia versus VS depression, all right, and there's a lot of information there, and it's a lot of good information, all right? Normally I send people to places like the Mayo Clinic or the Cleveland Clinic, all right? Or Johns Hopkins University Press. Outstanding, incomparable information. He broke it down so that it was digestible, all right? You told to go online and I didn't, okay. So did everybody get Johns Hopkins? Yeah. So Joan wants to send some suggestion to you, Claire, and that is accept yourself as you start, okay? Accept yourself, and that is a really, really good suggestion. Any other questions, any other comments that people would like to offer? We have about 10 minutes. Miriam says, I didn't get the link. Johns Hopkins University Press, what was his last? Scott Fotheringham, F-O-T-H, not F-A, not father, F-A-T-H, F-O-T-H-E-R-I-N-G-H-A-M, all right? Lots of good information. I want to show you some books as well that are really, really good. Really good. Okay. So, if you don't think you're worth it or you're not sure, okay, how to summon that, even though I am a flawed, imperfect human being, I'm still worth answers. I'm still worth the success I'm looking for. This is a good book, The Self-Esteem Workbook. And it's by Glenn R., and I'll spell it, SCHIRALDI, PhD. It really is a simple, effective program for mastery of liking yourself, conquering self-doubt, seeing your core worth, rational thinking, okay, body appreciation, developing and holding on to affirming thoughts, enlarging possibilities. When you offload the overwhelmed, the possibilities that are out there, you become aware of. Forgiving yourself, liking the face in the mirror, that's one. This is a really, really good one, mind you, it's that thick. If it's more anxiety, it doesn't even have to be phobia. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. Workbook, it's the 6th edition though, by Edmund, EDMUND, J. Bourne, BOURNE, PhD. This is a really, really good workbook. All right, really good workbook. And the thing I love about this one is that he, like myself, uses and stays within a holistic approach. He comes to you as a complete person, and you're allowed to be unique. You are allowed to be you. He doesn't believe in formulas. He doesn't believe there's one shoe size fits all. All right, he's very respectful and really coaches you to be kind and gentle with yourself. Okay. This is another excellent one. I like this. This is David Burns, 10 Days to Self-Esteem. It's kind of a hokey name, but it was probably the editor that titled the book. I can't imagine David Burns coming up with a title like that, but that's what it is. All right. And so he has a whole Feeling Good series about living with depression and anxiety. Great work. Great work. All right. This book I like because while it's not holistic in the way that Edmund Bourne's book is, it's infinitely usable. It's very, very user-friendly. It takes you through simple, understandable, effective, doable modules. All right. And so I also highly recommend this. Where is the other one? This is a book that I've just, I'm working with a colleague who's a psychologist. We kind of pair where children are involved in hoarding situations and the children are paying a price, or the parents want the child not to have to even possibly pay a price for their hoarding behaviors. And so Meg Warwick told me about this book, You Are Not Your Brain. All right. And it's a great little book. What I find the benefit of this book to be is that we don't have to be held hostage by the messages our brain sends us. It helps detail how not to get caught up in that immediate default to the chemicals that are sent to our brain by parts of our body, by experiences, by those 4 response styles, right? Fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Those are the 3 response systems. Fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And when we have that response, hormones and chemicals are sent to our brain, which influence us. And this book helps us understand that only in the case of imminent threat do we need to listen to those. All right. The rest of the time, it helps us take a step back and gain more control over really, truly, what should I act on? So it helps us not just be that automatic behaviors. All right, we have 11 new messages. Let's see what we have here. All right. Okay. Give me a bit here. Okay. Joan, start a fundraiser for hands-on hoarding support. I know. Deanna, to everyone, is the support group full? And if not, how does one sign up? Just email me. So there has been such a response that I think we're probably going to run 2 support groups. It's not that one is, we have more people right now by 1 or 2, but it's only been a week that I announced it. And so if you are interested, send me an email, and within the next week, I will know if there's enough people for a second group. But each of those groups will remain a closed community, all right? So do send me, if you're interested, do send me an email like today so that I can get things set up for you. So Lynn, thank you. I can see myself in Claire's lifelong struggles, lost traumas. I crumbled totally after more major losses in 2018. I'm finally learning to love and accept myself and forgive myself. And yes, most importantly, let go. If it's too heavy, put it down. All right, you're not meant to wear yourself out carrying unreasonable burdens. Maureen, you've helped me immensely move away from self-blame. Big albatross off my neck. But how can I begin to feel success and movement? I seem still to be frozen, waiting for divine intervention. That is a very good question. So one of the things, Maureen, I think, is to sit down and do an inventory of what are the pieces, true pieces, that are holding you back. All right. And then just do a little bit of, for want of a better word, meditation. I would just say mindful thinking on each. Don't let them all become like scrambled eggs. All right. And figure out sometimes situations that are, sort of the last ones to pile on, feel as imminently important as the ones that are the underpinning. And so we need to figure out, you need to prioritize, because you can't handle everything at once, all right? And if all else fails, do the 15 minutes a day, all right? 15 minutes a day. And if getting to 15 minutes feels like climbing a hill, start at 5 minutes a day, okay? And when you say 5 minutes a day, do 5 minutes a day. Don't do 10 minutes, don't do 15, and certainly don't get off on a roll where, it's a meaningless accomplishment because you didn't finish it. All right. If you haven't got a copy of the book, Conquer the Clutter, I would suggest you do, and work through the chapters, taking back your life. All right. Okay. So Deanna, I've been struggling to pack my house to move back to my hometown at the end of the month, and this has been very helpful. I'm really happy to, Diana. Jim has a link here. He's got a quite a big link here, that you can download from the chat box. Maureen, me again. One of the books you spoke to, Getting Past Being Overwhelmed. Is there an answer to that? One of the books you spoke to, one of these books, I think probably it was the anxiety book and the self-esteem book. These were the two books. Okay, the self-esteem book by Glenn Schiraldi, and the anxiety and phobia workbook by Edmund Bourne. Now, he's speaking to anxiety and phobia, but really, truly, his approach, I think, would be beneficial for whatever ails you. All right. Crystal wants to thank everybody. Thank you both, Elaine and everyone, for being here. Hey, Crystal. Thank you, Joan. Miriam, excellent answer. Thanks. I do have your book. Been reading it as a reward. No. It's not a reward. No. Rethink that concept. No, it's not a reward. I want you to approach that book as though you're eating a gourmet meal that you want to savor every single little bite. Okay? Really chew down on what is said in the book and how that applies to you. There is no formula. You've got to make it your own. Okay? And come back next week. And anybody who wants to be part of the hoarding support group, let me know and I will send you out the information. And at this point, it looks like we may actually be running 2 groups. All right. So, and I'll be in touch with everybody who has already confirmed that they want to be part of that first group to let you know. At this point, it seems as though most people wanted the 6:30 to 8 o'clock slot on the Monday evening. Okay. So anyway, stay tuned. We'll see you next week, and thank you for being here. Bye, everybody. See you next week. Have a great week. Stay safe. Stay well.
Bye, Elaine.
Bye. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Happy to.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye, Elaine. Thanks.